This video is sponsored by the Chinese Communist Party, genociding Muslims near you. Now, I wanted to make this video because I've been privy to some sort of, left-wing conversation. The good thing about having family that you're the only right-wing one, or really conservative one, and you got some tweeners there, is you get to experience the wide spectrum of conversations. And there was a conversation that came up of like why we shouldn't say the China flu and how saying the China flu is racist, and should we even say the UK variant or the variant that originated in the UK? And I'm going to make the case of why we should be calling it the China virus, not Kung flu. Okay? Because Kung flu, yes, there might be like a flippant, but like, no. To be an anti-racist, as Ibrahim X. Kennedy would say. To be anti-racist, to fight against evil, we should call it the China virus. And this brings up the great question that is being asked in our society is, are you racist or the Chinese racist? Or the CCP, the Communist Party of China? Now, the easy answer is obviously it's the Communist Chinese Party who is committing a genocide where there's actually systemic rape to the point of it's an actual industry in the province. Yeah, it's clearly the Chinese Communist Party. But you are racist is what they play. Now, this is standard tactics that the CCP uses in North America. You'll notice that they don't really care about racism towards Chinese people or East Asians when it's like things that don't affect them. The prime example of this is East Asians being excluded from Ivy League schools and advanced academic programs because there's already too many of them in there. So we need to, increase the diversity. So the East Asians who are performing at very high academic levels, they're being kept out of advanced classes because there's already too many of them in, right? They're being kept away from higher opportunities like Harvard or whatever. The Communist Party of China and the Chinese lobby says nothing about this because they don't care. Because, those East Asian people, they're really Canadians, right? They're Asian Canadians, Asian Americans. Those are Canadians and Americans. They don't matter. They're not the Communist Party. What does matter, though, is the reputation of the Communist Party. So what they will do is they will scream racism when it's something that affects them. They know this because, as they say, they know that the white people in their minds are so histrionic over this idea that they can control them, right? The best example of a really dumb white guy in Canada is Jagmeet Singh, right? Leader of the NDP, the whitest, most, socially unaware party there is. So you have Meng Wanzhou, a Huawei executive being busted for sanctions busting, helping to fund the Islamic Republic of Iran. Evil party funding evil government and general evil, shifty behavior. She gets arrested. Now they start to claim this is racism, right? The arrest of Meng Wanzhou, this is racist. This is when they start screaming racism. And you notice that all their proxies in the media will start screaming racism. And this worked on Jagmeet Singh, who had the worst interview of all time. It's on the channel. You can see the Jagmeet and Greet a Dumb Leader, where he basically melts down in front of Evan Solomon. Like, the Chinese destroyed what was left of Jagmeet Singh's brain. Okay, honestly, not the biggest accomplishment in Chinese history, but for whatever was still left there in Jagmeet Singh's head, it was completely fried when it was like, is Canada racist for arresting Meng Wanzhou? Donald Trump! He literally went that. So it works on certain people, those being idiots and woke leftists. So they play this. Now, the most pernicious example of this, or the biggest example in our modern time, is calling it the China virus is racist. This is the current thing they're trying to push. And so what I've established, I think previously, is like they just cry racism when it suits their political gains. And the political gain here is they want to cover up the fact that this virus is actually Chinese. This isn't like the Spanish flu, right? The Spanish flu, the reason it's called the Spanish flu is there's much more deaths in Spain at the time of World War I, but Spain wasn't in World War I, so other countries, to sort of not cause panic and reduce morale, would underreport deaths, whereas the Spanish who weren't in the war tended to report the correct number, so they got mislabeled with it. But this virus started in China, most likely in a Wuhan virology lab, and then the Chinese government specifically knew about the virus, let it keep spreading, shut down any dissent of people trying to raise awareness. Then when they learned they couldn't contain it, they decided to forcefully unleash it on the rest of the world by forcing people in Wuhan to travel other places they wanted to send to Hong Kong and Iran. So this is a China virus. This virus was brought to you by the government of China. And the reason why it is now a moral good to call it the China virus is we need to work together to undermine the global power of the Chinese government, right? And there's many different ways you do it, but you need to undermine them in trade, you need to undermine them in foreign policy, and they're very, very good at picking people off the stand individually. So I get it. This is an excuse for Justin Trudeau, but there's an excuse for Justin Trudeau if he was anti-China. He's pro-China, right? But if he was anti-China, there's an excuse that, Stephen Harper, Justin Trudeau is like, listen, I can't be the first one as a mid-level power to go against China because they'll just commit economic warfare against us, and it's very likely that other countries will be so cowardly they won't back us up. We need a global effort. Need to be led by the Americans. We had an American president leading this, but then when everyone started to call him, literally Hitler, so that all fell apart. Now, calling it the China virus is good because it is a virus that was made by China, and China is currently a global threat. It threatens us with, dishonesty, right? We paid them $45 million for vaccines they just decided not to give us because we have one of their people. They have kidnapped 2 of our diplomats and just kept them in horrendous conditions. They're committing a genocide in their western province of Xinjiang against the Muslim Uyghur population. They're also committing ethnic cleansing against Christians and other religious groups too. It gets less play because the Muslim one's bigger. But they are also evil. And they can also do this again. We need to put pressure on them. This should be called the China virus. This should not be called COVID-19. Everyone should be calling this the China virus because this is China's virus that they deliberately unleashed on the world with malicious intent in order to get out of, Donald Trump's global pressure that he was putting on them. So it sucked. They created this virus, most likely in a lab. They then used this virus to shut down the world's economy, and they're evil, committing genocide. So putting pressure on them and taking their world name down, right? If everyone just calls this the China virus, if they have to face some sort of shame and some sort of reparations, and they, kind of felt like, oh, if we release another virus, people just start calling it the China virus. They need to learn that they can't just poison the entire world and get away with it. So that's why you should do the right thing, be an anti-racist, and call this the China virus, because it is not COVID-19. It is the Chinese virus from China that is made by the Communist Chinese Party for the China virus, specifically in China for virus purposes, to unleash the China virus.